because I wanted to remind people of some old wisdom and then some new wisdom. And one bit of wisdom, I think it's wisdom, I thought of was the expression or the saying, ignorance is a weapon of mass destruction. And you might say, why did you think of that, Camille? How did you come about that? But I look around and I see people who are angry. It's usually because of something they don't know, or they think somebody else knows something that they don't know, or they feel insecure about something. Ignorance creates fear, it creates anger, jealousy. And so the more you know, the more at peace you are. And I hope that we as a people, all of us, you out there listening and watching, and when I meet you on the street, I really appreciate your conversation, your feedback, because we have to be about learning more, reading, but reading with insight, sharing information, challenging one another. It'll create peace among us. Something has to happen among these so-called major religions, which seem to find it necessary to fight each other because my God is better, because my religion is better. Study, talk, discuss. What makes your God better than... I thought there was supposedly one God, but is there a God? You know, it gets into a lot of questions, and we need questions, we need answers, we need study. The last show I had Dr. Brown on. She's a botanist, but she is a doctor of many things, really. She focused on melanin, the function of melanin. You know, we think of our skin, melanin causes the color, but melanin is throughout our body, our entire body. And she spoke of the pineal gland and how it's surrounded by darkness about melanin, and how that affects our psyche, our spirituality, how it affects everything in us. And so I just wanted you to do some more research on that. Her book was Why Darkness Matters, and it is published by the African American Images. You really need to find that book, Why Darkness Matters. That's one book you really should get. The other one is Dark Matters, Dark Secrets, all about the bodies of people of color, the bodies of everyone, but especially of the people of color. We used to think it's such a horrible thing to have darkness. Hey, study, find out the greatness of darkness. All right, that's by Owens Moore, PhD. Dark Matters, Dark Secrets. Come on, people, study, study, study. It'll make you feel good about yourself and about the world. The last one is The Meaning of Blackness by Emma Noor. The Meaning of Blackness, all with insight into our physiognomy, all insight into our spirituality, all of these books. So, well, by now you know you have arrived at Ancestor House, and here we talk about the greatness of African people. Come on inside. That's what we're going to do today. We have two marvelous guests who are going to share about activism and poetry and artists and creativity and all those things. Come on inside, and you'll be at home. Come on.
We must learn and tell our story, heal the pain and raise the glory. Tell it. We must learn and tell our story, heal the pain and raise the glory. Tell it. Not to know the family story is bad. Not to want to know it is worse. For to pass on ignorance to someone is it's like passing on a curse. And it will curse your father, curse your mother, curse your sister, curse your brother. And every time you come close to one another, it will be there in between to separate and instigate. We must learn and tell our story. We must learn and tell our story for ourselves. No one
Yes, we must learn and tell our family story. That's where our power is. Knowledge of yourself, ourself, because we have such a tremendous history. Here at this very spiritual, special place, Ancestor House, is where we tell the greatness of African people, people in diaspora, people on the continent. First, we thank the Mighty One. We thank the one that made us all, that gave us our first dignity as the parents of humanity. We say, tra, omaniaba, tra, omaniaba, tra, omaniaba. Let our ancestors be with us today to inspire our spirit, to direct our minds, to lift our tongues, to tell the greatness of our people. We thank the Creator who gave us life, Yao, and who sustains our lives, Yao. We thank our great ancestors who brought us this far, those bad ones, those tenacious ones, those who loved us more than they loved themselves. We thank you, ancestors. Thank you. When you're at home, call out the name of your ancestors, your cousin so-and-so, and your uncle so-and-so, or mother and your father. Call their names and give them some thanks. Thank you. This is Mother's Day, Mama's Day. We thank all the mothers. Yao, 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 Yao. I thank my mother, Ada Mae Mills, Wheatley. She was a great lady. She still is a great lady. So thank you, mothers. And we must acknowledge that there are those who do not want us to be our full and true selves, and they plot and plan against our doing so. And we say, let their plotting and planning go right on back to them and not come to us. Because we are who we are, mothers and fathers of humankind. And we can do so many things. We have guests today who are artists in many areas. But today we're going to focus on a brother. He was with us some years ago, and he's back. His name is George Edward Tait. And he has his sister, his lady with him, Akosua. And she's an artist too, so we're going to talk about art and activism and all those things today. Hey, George, thank you for coming back.
Please,
George Edward Tait, my dear, one of our great poets. What did they do to you? What title did they give you in Brooklyn?
Well, people, first of all, in Harlem, Poet Laureate of Harlem, but initially he was Poet Laureate of African Nationalism, then the Poet Laureate of the African Nationalist movement, and there is someone writing up a proclamation as we speak, so it should be announced at the book signing at African Poetry Theater.
When is that going to be?
That's going to be on May 22nd, Sunday, May 22nd.
May 22nd.
Yes, at 3 o'clock p.m.
Mm-hmm. At the African Poetry Theater.
At African Poetry Theater.
We will announce that again later on. But tell the people a bit about your background. I didn't bring your bio that you had sent me, but it's extensive. It goes on for a couple of pages, but just a little bit, your studies, how you became a poet, a published poet.
Well, started out in California, where I was born. I was raised in Harlem, and basically went to Catholic school, then public school, then eventually college. My interest in poetry or in literature specifically came through my father, through my mother, through my grandmother. All of them wrote extremely well. My father was a nationalist. He was a Garveyite, wrote for a magazine called The African. And wrote articles as far back as 1937, 1938. He was talking about by Black campaign, talking about we will, until Africa is free, we will not be free, etc. So that is the particular foundation, but I didn't connect with all of that until I worked at Will's Record Shop. And when I worked at Will's Record Shop, a music store on 125th Street, a number of nationalists would come in there, and Muslims would come in there, and all manner of assorted activists would come in there and discuss world politics.
Right.
And when they discussed world politics, that became my particular education. And I read and studied and went out to the rallies of Malcolm X, etc. Was at his funeral. So these particular things were the grounding forces that led me into being more of an activist myself,
right.
and working with several organizations, becoming head of the African Nationalist Pioneer Movement at one point, with the arts, dealing with being a band leader, dealing with writing books, dealing with theater, so forth and so on.
Wait a minute. A band leader, writing books, an activist. Take us back a little bit. First, your father set it up, consciousness of who
Right.
you are and your history.
Yes.
Then you went to college. How did the music come in? Where did you become study music?
Well, I loved music from a child, and I was raised in the Lincoln Projects, and at that time, most of us, we were listening to what was then called rock and roll, and people like Frankie Lyman, and it was the end of doo-wop, and listening to the Chantels and those groups, Heartbeats, etc. And I liked the groups, Flamingos. But then, and you remember the
Yes.
all right? I only have eyes for you.
Oh, God.
Never say goodbye, etc. 1959, I only have eyes for you. But 1959 was also the same year that Coltrane did Giant Steps.
Wow.
And Miles Davis did Kind of Blue. So
I have
when
to
I
tell
became...
people, George knows all the dates. You ever wanted to do history, bibliography, or whatever, discography, talk to George Tait.
So when I heard jazz, it really eclipsed everything else for me, and I think it connected with something that I had forgotten, and that is that when I was about 3 years old, before the Lincoln Projects, before they were built, my mother rented a room in a rooming house in Queens from James P. Johnson. So
Explain
the
that.
Harlem Strike pianist, he had a rooming house. So
Wow.
while the Lincoln Projects were being prepared, my mother rented a room from him. So I think that's when I had my first piano lessons and my first connection to the music. But when we moved into Lincoln Projects,
Right.
we didn't have that continuation. And then when I heard it on my own when I was about 14 or 15 years old on a more consistent basis, like I said,
Yeah.
it eclipsed everything else and I've never looked back.
I see. So music has influenced you, and how did the spoken word come in?
The spoken word, as I said, my father was a writer. His same name, George Edward Tait, and he wrote for The African. He was a nationalist, and he loved books, and I'm addicted to books myself, but he had a strong attraction in terms of just wanting to, just be around books and to read and read and read. And at one point he was working on a job and going to Columbia, taking 21 credits, and worked. So I don't know how he was able to do that, but he wound up graduating from Columbia. But he had respect for the word, and my mother had respect for the word. She didn't write books. She wrote proposals and letters to people, and she would use flowery language. She would use alliteration before I knew what that was. And a lot
You sure
of that,
know now.
I do know. I know that now. And she would, spice the letters with a lot of adjectives, and she was a great storyteller.
Yes.
So that word was important. And my grandmother, my maternal
Grew up with
grandmother in the church, she wrote poetry for the church, booklets, programs, etc. So I inherited that.
Yeah.
That particular love. And being that I was raised an only child, I found that it was easy to express myself, or easier to express myself on paper and the things that were around me.
Yeah.
And before I became a nationalist, I was a nonconformist. So being a nonconformist, I was able to critique society and write about those things.
You had
And then,
question about everything. You just
Yes.
didn't go along with
Right,
as they were.
right. and the skeleton in my closet that I don't mind telling people because it's real. The skeleton in my closet is Mad Magazine. You know, that a lot of people don't want to admit that they read it or they liked it and they learned from it. You know, but it was Mad Magazine because that was a magazine that held a mirror up to society, critiqued it, made us look at it in a way that was different than what was coming across from the mass media.
That is so good to question. It doesn't mean you're critical, you want to tear something down, but examine.
Yes.
You know, and what is it? What's the value of it really? And again, is it in your interest or whose interest is it in? You get into all of that. That's fantastic. Your background did all of that for you.
Yes.
Akosua, was your background equally as exciting?
Well, in different ways, of course. You know, my interest in music came at a very young age because my father was a musician.
Okay.
My brother was a musician, and his 5 sons, my nephews, were also musicians.
So it's a family affair.
Yeah, it was a family affair.
Right.
And when I was very, very young, I was very attracted to the music that wasn't popular of the day. So my parents, understandably, were a little concerned because they wanted to know, how is this child so attracted to Gloria Lynn? And why is she, you know, trying to listen to Errol Garner, who my father loved. My father loved Errol Garner.
Yes.
You know, and so when I was taking piano lessons, I could play piano by ear.
Yeah.
You know, and I could play just about everything.
That's fantastic.
You know, I wasn't able to nurture that because, again, you know, my parents were, you know, this kid is young and she's not like, go get a real job.
Yes.
And they, you know, for my best interests,
Yes.
you know, go get a real job, you know, kid. But then I found out that I could sing a little bit, and I didn't realize that I could sing. You know, you're inside your own life, and you do what you do. You do what you do. You're inside your own life. You may need me to say, Camille, that was wonderful. Oh, Nana, how did you do that? And you're like, well, this is what I do. You know.
I had a conversation. I did a class up at City College. Just came in and talked to the writing class, and they asked me when did I know that I was a writer. And I said, oh. When do you say this is what I am? It took a while. I had been writing, and I was in To Be Young, Gifted, and Black, the play, reading Lorraine Hansberry's work, and there was a time when she said, I am a writer.
Wow.
I said, yeah. You have to acknowledge it, accept it, and then, you know, possess it.
That's
So
right.
this is what happened to you also.
That is what happened to me, and but I never went out to sing professionally. I would always sing around, you know, in the shower or whatever, you know. And initially, you know, and then some friends of mine wanted me to go off and sing someplace, but I chose not to because I was raising children at the time. So I chose not to do that. So it was really it wasn't until I met my husband that he said, you know, you have a beautiful voice. And I was like, I was like, oh, okay. So, you know, don't you want to go out and sing? You know, and I was like, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. But then the Spirit came over me some years later.
Yes.
And what came over me, Nana, was that I needed to honor my ancestors.
That's right.
I needed to honor my ancestors, and that gave me the courage
to do it,
to do that. And so my husband, who does all of my selections for my music, I mean, I have some input, but, you know, he's so good at that. And, you know, I do the arrangements and so on and so forth. Then I realized that I love singing a cappella.
All right. That's
you know,
yes.
You know,
and
how that works for me is I hear arrangements in my head, and then it's like I hear the band, and then I could sing this, whatever the song is. You know, so that's how I really started singing.
So can we hear like an example of
I want to go there, but I want to do some more about the writing first. Then we'll get.
That'll be
to. We're coming back to the music.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
You were in the basement with the lights down low, dancing these slow jazz and dancing all that music, and then you heard jazz, and you said, "Wait a minute, this is on another level. It's more intricate. It's more what?" And then.
And they weren't called slow drag. I don't know
excuse me.
No. Some people call them that, but I know that, I don't know the FCC thing, but they call grind 'em ups.
Grind 'em up, there you go. Excuse me. I had a lapse.
Yeah, that was
a
a term that was being used then. But I heard jazz, and it was just nothing could compare to it. And I listened to Thelonious Monk. And people said, I was listening first to Ahmad Jamal and Miles Davis, etc., that became the entry musicians for a lot of people because they could hear Miles and connect, or hear Ahmad Jamal and connect.
Right.
But they said,
Monk was a bit difficult.
People said, well, you have to really like jazz, the older folks, if you want to listen to Monk. You know, I listened to him. It was automatic, straight up, fantastic. You know, so no matter who, Coltrane and the rest of the people, Clifford Brown, Billie Holiday, or it became my family in terms of how I connected with them and their creativity and their energy.
What was it that made that connection? What about their music?
It was something superior. Like, people were asking me, my peers, why are you listening to that music, the jazz? What is jazz about? So I looked it up so I could have a concise answer for them. When I was 15 years old, they said, well, what is this jazz? And I said, well, jazz is a form of American music characterized by intense emotional, personal expression with emphasis on rhythmic drive and improvisation. And so then that would shut them up. But I would just alter that, and time I understood it's an African music. It's not an American music. It's an African music transplanted from Africa to America.
But people will criticize. They say, no, the instruments are European. The chord structure is... They claimed European. How do you say this is an African thing?
It's African because most of the instruments were based on African instruments, string instruments, woodwind instruments, etc. But also, Western music can be traced to Pythagoras, a Greek that got a lot of credit for a lot of things.
His mathematics.
Yeah, mathematics, Pythagorean theorem, etc. But Pythagoras, as you know, studied in the Kemetic mystery system.
That's right.
So that's where he got the knowledge from, and took credit, or people gave him the credit, and then Europe went to him, which was a dilution of what he had learned. He was the student that was giving that information. So all in terms of scale structure and the chord structure, all of that is straight out of Africa.
Most of it, much of it came to Europe through Greece, not through Greece, I mean later on through Spain. And it can be traced right back there.
Sure.
Even the guitar, there weren't. I think there were 3 strings on the guitar, and the African influence again put that other string on it. Did all kinds of things. So after you dazzled them, your question is, with that, did they stop, or no? What happened to you? You were 15 when you were answering these questions.
Yes.
And then what happened? You studied music.
Well, yeah, I was studying music in school. I had some kind of little band in the Lincoln Projects. I was taking, at that time, some private lessons, clarinet lessons, and with somebody with a French horn. William Simmons had a French horn, and then at Burgess, I think he had a saxophone. Sounded horrible.
This is your band?
Yeah, no, this was the first attempt at something, but we were together, and like, nobody knew anything. We were just making noise. We were just making noise. But what took place is that I just listened to more and more music, and I would pile the albums up. I would stack them up, which wasn't good, on the record player, And at that time, I had extension speakers. I stretch out on the middle of the floor and put the speakers right by each ear, just let the music play like that. And I started building up my collection. I remember when I had 25 albums and then 50 albums, I would walk around with them because I was like company. I would take lunch money to buy albums with because it was like a lifeline, and I couldn't get enough of this particular music. It was magic for me then. It's magic for me now. The greatness of it, the people who are still dealing with it. Akosua, my wife, she mentioned Gloria Lynn before, and still, she's still great. I mean, just fantastic. And people, Randy Weston, still here, still great. These are fantastic people on the planet, still creating the music. So I've been nourished by it all of these years. And later, I had the opportunity to have a group. We called it Black Massical Music. We were at that time getting away from because it was, we said it's for the masses as opposed to a class thing. And it was influenced a lot from what Coltrane was doing, what Sun Ra was doing, what Albert Ayler and others were dealing with. So cosmic music, cutting edge music, etc. Of course, it wasn't overly popular. You know, we gigged at the East, and I think G2 has another place now called For My Suite in Brooklyn. But he had the East then, so we gigged at the East, Studio Museum in Harlem. Cable show, cable show on 125th Street, teleprompter. We had a series on that, so colleges, etc. You know, and we tried to record an album at one point.
How was that music? You know, when we were brought here, we brought history, we brought we brought skills, we brought the depth of our music, of our spiritual music with us. We brought all kinds of training and gifts with us, musically speaking. And it nourished us through the most horrible period of our existence called enslavement. That music called spirituals and the hollers and all of those other things. What did jazz do spiritually for us?
Well, jazz was a liberating force because it showed us a world that we were not in. It spoke to a place that we could not see. So it was this secular parallel to what was happening inside the church with the gospel music, you know, something happening by and by one day, you know, how I, you know, when I get over or how I got over, etc. But another world, it wasn't about the plantation, it wasn't about the degradation, it wasn't about the insults, but it's a different world. So when a jazz musician would pick up the horn, Lester Young, Charlie Parker, whoever, the interpretation was beyond anything around them, even though Charlie Parker said, if you don't live it, it won't come through your horn. So you had to actually live that, something. But it was reaching for something else. They would hit the notes that were off the page. This is what Louis Armstrong did. This is what Charlie Parker did. This is what Coltrane did. Sidney Bechet, he did it. Soprano saxophone. So many people did this. If you look at the notes, you would see one thing. They would follow the notes in the chord progression, but then something else was happening. It was spirit. It was beauty. It was the glory of the Creator. It was something that was in our DNA that we were talking about. That we were remembering it through these sounds, through the rhythms and the tonality and the inflection, and something that we were showing, something else, not just what's around us. Everybody could see what's around us.
It was still
something else,
still healing. When you listen to jazz, it does a whole thing to your brain, to your mind. It sort of recircuits things in a very healing way. When our people were down on those plantations, they began to shout, "Yeah, yeah, man.
Right.
Even James Brown did that scream. You understand that goes way back.
Sure.
You're not going to put it on the. You're not going to notate it. You know, all of those things that could not be notated, but which moved us and healed. It's the same thing the musicians were doing.
Right.
And it was such a gift. I'm going to. We have an amount of time so we can cover this kind of thing, and then get back to what we're going to.
Sure. And with Coltrane, many people call what he said, what he played, his sound. They call it the voice of God.
Really?
And when he made his transition,
Yeah.
even before that, when he was interviewed, he wanted to become a saint. And after he made his transition, the church in San Francisco honoring him is the Church of St. Coltrane.
Serious?
Yes, it's been there for some time, and they play Coltrane's music. People come and they sit up and listen. The minister, he plays saxophone and on and on. But I'm saying the power that he had. People heard the sound and knew it spoke to another world, another frequency, another dimension, something else.
Another frequency, and that's important. And there is evidence of, and there's discussion among the Dogon people also, of the sounds that are planetarian. I mean, they're planet vibrations.
Music of the spheres.
And the sister was here, Dr. Brown, who was saying that the pineal gland, it vibrates, and with us, because of the darkness and other things, it vibrates more than it does with other people, and that gives us another level of people say spirituality, but creativity.
I want to mention that and lead into a poem.
Yes,
All right.
please.
The thing with Ann Brown, Dr. Brown, and we were at the program with Dr. Richard King, and in terms of talking about melanin and the power of it, beyond just the darkness itself, but energy, intelligence,
Yes.
spirituality, so much stuff, so many things, aspects to the melanin. But the melanin, as you know, is under attack. Being here, we are ashamed of our own greatness.
Yes.
We are ashamed of those things that other people don't have, and because they don't have it, they criticize it, they critique it, and then they make us ashamed. So we try to get rid of it. So the bleaching creams are just selling out in the black communities around the world, here, Caribbean, Africa, and parents bleaching their children.
Yes.
And there's a selection process that goes into trying to select somebody to mate with, so that person
The color
will be lighter.
Everybody's lighter. Oh,
So this poem, I'm going to read this poem. It's called Infanticide, and it's about what's happening to the children. When I was coming up, I used to see infants jet black.
Yes.
I don't see that now.
I hear you.
I don't see
I hear
it.
you.
Infanticide blues.
What page? Now, before we go any further, the book is called
Sword
Songs. Sword Songs. And we need you to get, there's going to be book signings all around the city and in Brooklyn and every place else. But you are on page what?
This is on 129 I'm reading from now.
So when you get this book, go to page 129. You're going to read the whole book, but you can go there first. Go ahead.
Okay. Infanticide blues. Where are they? Where are the children with the black skin? Where did they go? Who is responsible for their disappearance? Are extraterrestrials to blame? Is it a government conspiracy? Is it massive medical malpractice? Has Herod returned? Where are the children with the black skin? I walk the streets, ride the trains and buses in search of children with black skin. But I only see brown and beige. The brown ones with mothers of black skin, the beige ones with mothers of brown skin. But where is the black child with the black skin?
Can somebody tell me, where are they? I focus on film footage, frame by frame. I view videotapes. I browse through books and magazines and newspapers. Sometimes I see skin of caramel and sometimes coffee. How did we modulate from melanin to mocha? Where are the children with the black skin? Sometimes I see them staring from another land, but they are starving and surrounded by flies. Sometimes they are imported from the motherland, but as soon as I blink, they are gone. In illustrated history books, I see them, and in coffee table retrospectives of yesterday, but they elude me in life. From time to time, I'm teased and tricked. I confuse actuality with apparition. Are they minute mirages of melanin? My eyes water in anticipation. I try not to blink, but I do. And as soon as I blink, they are gone. Finally, I see one. A black child with black skin, a sighting for sore eyes, hated for his hue. A fugitive of the flesh, the prototype of the planet, a refugee in his own race. Behold, a beautiful black baby in a blanket of blue, the one that got away, the one that got through. Reality and radiance under the radar. I gaze upon the glorious God skin of Grandassaland, but I better not blink.
You better not blink. That's wild. That's wild. That's very, very true. I'm going to get back to the poem, but you said Grandassaland. What is that?
Grandassaland, that was one of the names for, Grandassaland was one of the names for Africa. It's called, of course, Alkebuland, Grandassaland, Savannah Land, the whole continent was called Ethiopia at one point. But I used Grandassaland because Alombe Brass and Kwame Brathwaite with Ajaz. They had Grandassa models that they featured African people with African features, and they celebrated that in the very early 60s. And initially it was laughed at, but it became popular because of them.
The movement was at that time, and people were going in consciousness.
And they were influenced by Carlos Cooks, who had a natural standard of beauty contest. And to my understanding, he was the only one who has ever done that. No one before or since have a beauty contest for black women where the way you win the contest is for you to have African features. The more African features you have in terms of your skin, your hair, your knowledge, the more you had, the more likely you were to win. You know, and I just want to mention this very quickly. There, just by point of contrast, there was a contest in Bermuda about maybe 2 decades ago, and there were 25 beauty contestants. 24 in Bermuda. 24 black. 1 white. 5 judges. 4 black, 1 white. Who won?
The white.
Yes, you're psychic.
The damage is deep. The damage is profound, and that's what we have to constantly work on again. We've been through this, now we have to do it again. I'd like you, George Tait, Edward Tait, to do the poem you were going to do about music, so that Akosua could bless us with her song.
All right.
Would you want to go back, Akosua, and do that? What is the name of the song?
The name of the poem is Midnight Rounds, and I wrote this poem specifically for Akosua because when I heard her do Round Midnight, it sparked something that was more than someone with a great voice and knew what they were doing with this seemingly simple but very complex song to deal with. And what I was saying before about speaking of another world, another frequency, another dimension, she gets into that. Coincidentally, she was born the same year that Monk composed the song Round Midnight.
Really? Oh, really?
So there's a whole connection with
Yes.
that. So I had to write something about it. So I wrote this particular poem, and then she's going to
sing.
Yes.
To sing. Okay.
Midnight Rounds. She begins to sing round midnight, round midnight. Chords begin to cling to her voicings. Monk by chance begins to dance whenever she sings round midnight. Have you heard her sing round midnight? Round midnight. Have you heard bells ring to her phrasings? I must tell about the spell of her magic midnight song. Sometimes the singer is the sibling of the song, sired in the same year, conjoined in creativity, twins of tonality in time, one of flesh and chords, the other of notes and blood. To see the diva is to hear the duet, the singer and the song. Singer in the spotlight, styling her sounds, Monk at midnight, making his rounds. To see the one is to hear the other. To hear the one is to see the other. Out of the nucleus of nature, she is a nimbus in the night. Her vintage voice filling the vaporized void with veracity. It is midnight when she sings it. Sometimes midnight in the morning, sometimes midnight at midday. It is a midnight of the mind, making it a midnight in the moment. As surreal shadows sit in solitude and sway in synchronization, and somniferous sounds serenade a setting sun, evolving into the emotional eclipse-trophy of evening, while the day departs and disappears into the dusk, and rendition rises into ritual round midnight. It is a midnight of blackness and blues, of perpetual passions and purple pain, of daily denials in a nocturnal netherworld of nothingness, of the symbiotic siblingism of the singer and the song, of the skill within the singer and the story within the song. It is the a cappella artistry of Akosua. Listen to the loneliness within the lyrics. Listen to the longing within the lament. Listen to the lesson within the larynx. Midnight, moonlight dramatizes the dark, while west winds walk on water without waves. Silence sabotages sleep as hell holds hostage the heart. The siblings sing into a starless sky. The sound saturates space. The tone traumatizes timelessness, making melancholia the malignancy of motion and memory. Lifelessness leeches off the lovelorn, especially expressively round midnight. Time to hear her sing round midnight, round midnight. Time for you to bring your attention. Time for me to count to 3 so we can hear round midnight.
It begins to tell round midnight, round midnight. I do fairly well till after sunsets. Supper time I feel
around midnight, round midnight, haven't got the heart to face those memories when my heart is still with you. And oh, midnight knows it too. When some quarrel we had needs mending, does it mean that this whole affair's got to be ending? No, 'cause darling, I need you, and lately I'm beginning to find that you are out of my arms and out of my mind. Let our wings take wing around the midnight hour. Let the angels sing of your returning, and you let your love be safe and sound. Boom, 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 boom. When that naughty old midnight, boom, that naughty old midnight, boom, that naughty old midnight, he keeps creeping and he keeps crawling around at midnight.
All right, sister. Come. Thank you. Thank you so much. This takes us into, thank you so much, Akosua. That was beautiful.
My pleasure.
How we, as people of African ancestry, approach the art is different. I mean, it's us, and it is in many ways. We were talking before the show about machines that they have now. When you sing, everything it's almost like a metronome, dun, 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 dun. And the machine puts everything, it makes everything the same. That's not us.
Yeah.
Ours is variation. Ours is, we do all kinds of swirls and bringing differences in it according to what's here and what's in our heart.
Yeah, I used to talk about the difference between a beat max and a max beat.
Go ahead, tell us about that.
The beat max is the machine, the max beat, that's our African tradition
Max
through
beat
Max
is
Roach.
gotcha.
Max Roach is the Max beat. All right, but the beat Max was a machine that they used as a drum beat, and it's insulting that the masters of rhythm on the planet would be reduced to have some kind of machine keeping the beat when we're making music.
And even the new machine, which has everything on a certain pitch, that's not necessarily how people sing. And we are getting used to hearing everything exactly that way, which is taking us further and further away from who we are. There's certain singers who are been out here for years, it's moving people, but now they're using this machine because they're saying, you know, you need to do this. We don't need to do that. I think we need to step back into who we are, and so we can sing.
Well, even with the great singer Abby Lincoln Aminata Moseka, when she was in the studio and she was singing some of Monk's music, and he was there. So Max Roach, her husband at the time, asked him, well, you know, what did you think of the music? He said, you know, make some mistakes.
I like that. Yeah. You know. What are mistakes to some people? It's too distinct to we come from, many of us, I mean, ancestrally, a lot of ritual singing, which had not so much to do with the beauty of the voice, but what you were saying colored it. So now we're here singing songs that don't mean very much, so we can do those little machine singing. But I think we really have to recapture that we had before.
We need to recapture it, but it's going to be increasingly difficult because we're in a society that we don't control. And the people who are in control of the society, they do not want us to express African creativity.
But they want it. They want to express it.
They want to express it. They don't want us to express it. So because of that, we find ourselves diluting ourselves year after year, decade after decade. And so even the young people, when they listen to what is being called music, they hear the dilution, and that becomes what they aspire towards. And so it's getting worse and worse and worse. And basically, we're talking about the necessity to separate from these people who are in control, because ultimately this is their institution, their system that they
set the rules.
They set the rules.
They defined it.
Yes.
It bothers me they have these awards that they give out for Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and all of that. But where's the Jazz Hall? Where's the Rhythm and Blues Hall of Fame? Off of which all of those other things were built.
Absolutely.
While we're here talking, and I have wanted to ask you your opinion on this for a long time, how did we get to hip-hop as we know it today? Not as it was created by our young geniuses, but as we know it today. And what effect is it having on our community?
Well, it was an accident. What happens with people who can be defined as enemies to African culture, African development, African creativity, they're not creative. So what they do is they see what we are drawn towards and then attempt to use that against us. So there's supposed to be a government agency called PSYOP, Psychological Operations, that they do this around the world. They find out weaknesses or strengths or whatever, and they use that against the nation, against the person. etc. So with hip-hop, hip-hop would have been long over if we didn't like it so much and it didn't impact on the young people as much as it did. When it started impacting on the young people. Wasn't that the intention?
Wasn't that the intention? It was the young people who started that form.
Right. it was the intention to create something new, like we did with doo-wop, like
Yes.
we did with bebop, or whatever.
That's right.
This is what we do.
Yeah.
And then we get tired of it, or it evolves into something else. We go
Yes,
something
it
else.
evolves, it
Right, it
grows.
evolves. But the people who were in control saw a weapon. And just like you said, ignorance is a weapon of mass destruction. Hip hop became a weapon of mass destruction in terms of the youth. So it's being used against young people. It was co-opted from the original creators of
co-opted
it.
and corrupted.
Corrupted, right.
Co-opted,
Yeah.
corrupted,
And controlled.
controlled.
If you see me looking strange up here, it's because I'm not sure of how much time we have out here. We have time? Okay. Co-opted, corrupted,
Controlled.
and control. Of course, that's how they
Yes.
corrupted, by taking control of it. Some years ago, there was a broadcast. 1 minute, you're telling me? I'm so sorry about this. We have to abruptly shut this down. But this book, your book of poems, is called Sword Songs, Selected Poems by George Edward Tait. When is the book signing?
The book signing May 22nd, Sunday, May 22nd at 3 p.m. at African Poetry Theater, that's out in Jamaica. You can go online, swordsongs.net or georgeedwardtait.com, T-A-I-T, georgeedwardtait.com, or swordsongs.net and get all the information. Or you can call up African Poetry Theater, 718-523-3312, and get information from them.
It's in Queens.
It's in Queens on Jamaica Avenue.
Listen to the poetry. Listen to the brother talk because he has so much to say. Akosua, thank you for coming today.
My pleasure,
Thank
Nana.
you for your song, your singing, sharing that greatness with us. And this is Ancestor House, where we tell the story, the greatness of our people. We will see you again next week, I hope. And I might see you on 116th Street, 114th Street, wherever. But I love you wherever you are. Happy birthday to all mothers. Thank you for being mothers. Thank the world for us. I'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you for having
You
us.
have to
Thank you,
sign
Nana.
this for me. Da-dum-da-dum-dum-dum.
We must learn and tell our story, heal the pain and raise the glory. Tell it. We must learn and tell our story, heal the pain and raise the glory. Tell it. Not to know the family story is bad.